I'll play the audio so you can see it. He said something on the lines of, the Palestinians are the most pathetic people on the earth, on planet Earth. And the crowd went crazy. They said, that's just outrageous, it's racist, it's insulting. Meanwhile, there was another speaker. And by the way, when he said this, you'll see in the clip, the chair said it's out of order. He cannot say such a thing, the chair of the Oxford Union. But there's another speaker called Miko Peled who said that what Hamas did on October 7th was an act of heroism. Heroism. And yet, it seems like there was not much of a commotion, and I'll show you that clip as well. Didn't cause the same commotion from the chair of the Oxford Union. There was what seemed like there's widespread support among the students. Now, I'll unpack what Mossab's words. And frankly, I have to say that Palestinianism, the cause of Palestinian nationalism, quote unquote, I would say is possibly the most pathetic example of nationalism, simply because it is based on lies. It's based on falsehoods from start to finish. And these are not my words. These are the words, this is the ideology of the Palestinian leaders, both past and present, who have made it clear they're not actually interested in a genuine self-determination. Because if they were, they'd be they wouldn't have. Then why was it that they weren't bothered by Egypt and Jordan controlling parts of the territories between 48 and 67? They didn't demand being a Palestinian state then. The whole identity is phony. It's based on simply wanting to get rid of Israel. So if your whole national identity is simply on hating another and simply not concerned with your own self-determination, because they'd be happy to be part of another Islamic state or empire, and it's simply just about hating on the Jews and the Jewish state, yes, I think that is utterly pathetic. If the thing that they're given opportunity after opportunity, funding, so much funding, and so many economic opportunities, and they're given chances for peace, and Israel's withdrawals from land they captured in a defensive war like Gaza, and they just respond with terrorism, creating cycles of poverty and hatred, and all the things that they lament are self-inflicted. They try to kill the Jews and they lose, and when they lose, they cry and they say, hey, you displaced us. No, you actually displaced yourself by going to war against the Jews. Had you just said, okay, we're both here, we both live here through legal purchases of land and through ancient historical rights to be here. But you didn't accept that. And then they complain and whine when they lose and tell the world, hey, woe is me. That is utterly pathetic. They commit the worst massacre against Jewish men, women, and children since the Holocaust. And then when Israel targets Hamas, they whine and complain. To me, I think it's totally fair to say that the nationalism of Palestinians is the most pathetic and evil on planet Earth. It's based on utter nonsense. It's their own words. It's not my words. They consider themselves part of the Arab world. Not talking about individuals. Let's not forget, Mossab is himself a Palestinian. He's not necessarily saying he himself is pathetic. He's saying the cause, the identity that's been constructed, which is based entirely on a cynical ploy to undermine the Jewish state, is pathetic. And yet, unacceptable for him to say what he says, but Miko Peled can say the Hamas are doing acts of heroism, and that's completely fine. That's not inflammatory. That's totally fair. It's disgraceful. But I'm going to show you the clip. Have a watch.
My name is Mus'ab Hassan Yunus. For those who don't know me, I think most of you know who I am.
Order. Please allow the speaker to make a speech in silence. And please show courtesy to the speaker.
I am sentenced by my father to death. He made my blood allowed. Why? Because I reported on suicide bombing attacks that targeted civilians indiscriminately. This is my crime. And guess what? It is not a secret that we discovered. It was my initiative that I revealed myself to the public of what I did because I am not ashamed of saving human lives. You should be ashamed of taking the fight of terrorism. Also, I am not going to apologize for reporting Hamas and for reporting terrorists. And know that we will fight anyone who takes the side of terrorists. Hamas is a terrorist organization in the UK, in the United States, in the European Union, and it's not up to you to decide. Sit down. Now listen, only Sheikh Hassan Yusuf has the authority and the power to pull the trigger.
That's his father.
Not you, not him, not her. Only Sheikh Hassan Yusuf, he has the courage to point the gun at his oldest son and pull the trigger. Anyone else who tries to do that will be dealt with differently. Now, how many of you sitting here want to teach me a lesson about morality? If you knew about October 7 attacks, any of you, raise your hands. If you had information about Hamas attack on October 7, would you report it to the authorities? If you do, raise your hand.
Police station.
Sit down.
To be clear, only 25% of the room said they'd report Hamas's plans of October 7th to the authorities. Now, it was clearly a very selective audience, people who are already deeply predisposed towards hating Israel, but still, it just shows the level of hatred and poisonous hatred that exists around the world and in these elite institutions like Oxford.
Less than 5% in this room
He says less than 5%. Even worse.
raise their hands that they will report a massive terrorist attack that targeted civilians indiscriminately, that includes Arabs, Muslims, Jews, Christians, peaceful farming communities on October 7, ethnically cleansing 20 Jewish communities because of their ethnicity and because of their religion. What's happening in Gaza is not the same. Because you are the one who's taken the side of terrorists, knowing exactly your role, and you are enjoying it. But at some point, you will have to deal with the consequences, because everything is recorded against you. Now, there come the Palestinians, the most pathetic people on planet Earth. They want to delegitimize someone who's born in that land.
Point of order has been
I
raised.
was
Point of order has been raised.
Don't you dare
Have to
say
make a
that.
point of order.
I have two
Have to
Palestinians.
make
Sit down.
Could I get a point of order?
He's a Palestinian.
The speaker just insulted me personally and many
Sit down.
Order. It is not for you to tell a member to sit down. But point of order is directed to the chair. Order. Order. Could I get a point of order from Ferguson?
The speaker just insulted me personally and
Order.
The speaker just insulted me personally and insulted many Palestinians, and I asked him to be escorted out of the chamber in the same manner that a fellow student was escorted out of the chamber when she was alleged to have insulted.
Again, I'll have to ask the speaker to leave. The speaker was out of order.
Excuse me?
Order. Could I get a point of
enjoying this? Are you enjoying? Are you smiling? Are you enjoying this? It's very funny that you're enjoying this. It's not for your entertainment. It's not entertaining. It's a stop smiling. Idiot.
The speaker made absolutely no reference to anyone in this chamber. He passed an opinion on his own people. Would be please be allowed to continue to debate, given how important his voice is in the conversation.
Order. I have made my ruling very clear.
What is your ruling? I did not insult anyone in the room.
Order.
Yes.
Could I hear the point of order?
Given that this is a speaker who, once invited by this union, was then attempts being made to prevent him from coming here to speak, and now we have seen that committed again in the course of this speaker speaking, he has a right to freedom of speech. He has
This, by the way, sounds like it's Natasha Hausdorff, who is, of course, a brilliant advocate for Israel, arguing on the same side.
the right to speak in this chamber as an invited guest of this union, to order him out as a result of the opinion he has expressed on his own people brings this union into disrepute. It is
Order. I have made my ruling very clear. The Speaker, please proceed without making any disparaging references to any population. Please continue.
They want to delegitimize my right to exist because I oppose their violent ideology. Then they want to cry day and night of a victim.
Order. I have to hear the point of order.
The speakers of the opposition have spent this entire debate insulting Zionists, Israelis, Israel being a nationality.
Not Israelis. Not Israelis.
I've heard the point of order. You have seen a member being asked to leave the chamber for a different side of the chamber. I have made sure that both sides of the chamber are allowed to make their speeches and that they are allowed to be heard. Could I please allow without any further points of order? Please continue.
So, obviously, you can watch the full audio here posted by Jonathan Sagadotti on X. But it's just unbelievable. You hear from the chair saying, we can't have disparaging comments made about a population. As you'll see, and I'll show you the clip, Miko Peled says he celebrates what Hamas did as acts of terrorism. Sorry, he called it acts of heroism rather than terrorism. Heroism. And the speaker, the chair, has no issue. He allows it to continue. Now, by the way, there's a police probe into what Peled said. So Hamas, who wished to genocide the Jews and did a genocide, and he calls that acts of heroism, that's not disparaging against a population. But when Mossab Hassan Youssef, who is himself a Palestinian, stands up and says that Palestinians are the most pathetic people on planet Earth, let's be clear, okay? He himself doesn't consider himself pathetic. What he's talking about is the nationalism of this group of people and what it is, the cause that they've been fighting for, the ideology they have. Ultimately, of course, I don't think, and I'm sure he would agree, he's not talking about every single individual. But when you look at what they have been, the cause they as a group of people have been fighting for, you know, people try to separate what Hamas did from the Palestinians. According to recent polling, 75% of the population of the Palestinians in both Judea and Samaria and Gaza support what Hamas did on October 7th. So you've got a group of people whose entire identity is based on falsehoods, which they themselves admit. They consider themselves part of the Arab world and happy to be part of another Arab nation so long as it's not the Jews who have control of any part of their ancient homeland. And they themselves are telling us that they don't actually really see themselves as distinct people. The Palestine National Charter says we consider ourselves an inseparable part of the Arab world. So all they want to do is just get rid of Israel, and then when Israel pushes back and defends herself and wins, they cry wolf. That to me is, yes, utterly pathetic. If that's what your whole national identity is based around, and it's based on lies. It's not even based on a true national identity. According to they themselves, the leaders of this movement. How else could you morally surmise the Palestinian cause? Frankly, I think you could use far stronger language than pathetic. So Mossab has to withdraw his remarks. Meanwhile, here's Miko Peled. Just have a listen to what happens here.
What we saw on October the 7th was not terrorism.
They were killing children. He literally stated.
These were acts of heroism of a people that have been oppressed and killed.
Shame!
This is illegal.
You like terrorism Act 2000?
Terrorism Act 2000.
Arrest him.
Oh, really? Isn't that convenient?
Kibbutz Be'eri was one of the settlements that was taken.
May you please remind the opposition that this is not the West Bank and you do not have the right to, order us around or threaten us.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but where is the objection from the speaker here? Sorry, from the chair, as they call it, the chairperson. I mean, the double standards are shocking yet utterly unsurprising. And by the way, for those who are watching this that may be under any doubt about the fact that what Hamas did is terrorism, evil, and in no way an act of resistance and heroism, let's understand very clearly that this notion that Israel was just oppressing the people of Gaza, terrible to them, so what do you expect? First of all, let's just assume that's true. It's not, but let's just say that is true. If my grandparents and their generation escaped the horrors of the Nazi concentration camps and then went out into the streets of Europe and started burning, beheading, raping, mutilating random German men, women, and children, just whoever they could get their hands on and find, I can assure you right now the Jewish people would not support that as wonderful acts of heroism and resistance. And the fact that they do, people in this room, people that support the Palestinian cause, and the majority of Palestinians, I'd say, yeah, it makes them pathetic. Well, you'd have, I think that it's time we start competing.
We are screwed. Lie has become the absolute. Skip, scop, scallywag, can I get a doggy bag? Lady man in drag, expose the beanbag. 10 mil Nicky rivals on the rooftop. 2024, the year the woke slop flop. Vote for the same or it's not democracy. Studio layoffs fulfill the prophecy. Morally superior beacon of decency. Christian tuned into hypocrisy frequency. Hormonal yap about gaming's future. Attention starved like a ball sack smoocher. Remove choice infantilization. Flat chest non-binary menstruation. Kingdom come developer based. Gendermancer self-insert disgrace triggered by titty but a real adult. Lead the charge, says the Puritan cult. 1 million impressions but 5k likes, but you'll just say it's cause you're Christian, right? Say goodbye to comfy and cushy and try to scrape the tar juice out of your pussy. Hello, beta testers. Like and subscribe and allow me to genuinely speak my mind. A while back I shared this brain-damaged take, obvious bait offered up by hack journalist Paul Assey of Forbes, implying that First Descendant swimsuits were nudity. Today, I'm happy to share with you that a dancing digital honey in a swimsuit in a video game with the caption, "Is this what gamers want?" made some Christian really just lose his mind, asserting that anyone with decency would never want this for the future of gaming, and they're bringing morality into question and talking about how real adults with their arousal in check need to lead the charge. Real dweeb ass shit. And then he responds to Smash JT bringing his family up immediately, trying to guilt trip him, and the tweet receives 1 million impressions and not even 5K likes by the time of the recording. But these kinds of entities are not worth your time because they'll pretend that their Christianity is the controversy. So while ignoring reality, these entities, with their ironic lack of self-awareness, enough to instantly fail to understand that they're exhibiting the exact behavior that make people hate the radical pronoun posse. I was on Smash JT's stream and had to subject myself to the actual boneheaded, just knob-gobbling thoughts of these fucking nitwits. And to think that they're dilating that a-hole for animations of a Lucio character that they're too ignorant to even understand is part of the kit for this character. The same activist justice warriors that were trying to take down the most popular game in the world, Grand Theft Auto, were identically these people Marge Simpson, proudly asserting that since it's not to their taste, that nobody should be able to enjoy it. Won't somebody please think of the children? If these killjoy, lovejoy entities aren't satisfied with the attention that they're needing so they can impose their will, if this is your stance, man, and you're listening to this, of course you're worthy of the hatred, and I pray that the Lord encamps his angels around you to protect you, so hopefully you can manage a moment of clarity in your privileged life. It's so insane. It's chef's kiss bait because of the ridiculously tame game that you chose that doesn't even approach the actual nudity or sex scenes that you're seeing in these other games. No matter how hard you try, clothed women in a video game are not pornographic content. It's gay that you raise issue not with the men ever, all the times we see them scantily clad, but the moment a woman in a mature game and got you just, oh, your butthole leaking? You this desperate for attention. Which is it? It can't be both. You're reaching Jaffe levels of willing to say anything with your pants down for just a little crumb of attention. Give me a crumb. Pride is a sin, right? And with enough takes this brain damaged, you might actually have people looking back at woke and wondering if perhaps they were too harsh. You ever divide so fucking hard that you unite? It's called earned hatred. And the mistake people should realize is that they thought too highly of some of you people. I agree to disagree, but I have to make it clear what a shame it is that you chose something so genuinely tism-tard coded that it's mind-shatteringly juicy bait that is truly irresistible. I'm playing Brown Dust 2, Girls Frontline 2, Nikke Goddess of Victory, and these games are so racy I can't even show them on this platform. But what the hell ever, okay? Marvel Rivals. Beta testers. I showed you some of these games well before these losers were even fucking clocking them, because as one of the few non-woke gamers on the whole freaking platform who happens to be a normie as well, I wanted to keep hope alive. Now everybody's talking about Crimson Desert and Infinity Nikki. Marvel Rivals enjoys such a healthy launch and excited player base experiencing catharsis with beautiful characters for a change that they'll have no problem selling skins, because they're not deliberately ugly. They were not given the ESG DEI Larry Fink special treatment, so people are quickly sharing the models online so that they can create and freely advertise your dog shit, and it's a popular thing. Remember that? Remember popularity? Remember profit? That used to be y'all at one point. People would actually enjoy the kind of content that maybe was happening with Overwatch back when that was good all those years ago. I've been excited for Project Mugen, renamed Ananta, who happens to have the models for their upcoming game, this anime GTA, available to download on their website to anybody who wants them. Guys, if you could do the channel a big favor, tell me what kind of program I could use to have the models like dancing for B-roll, because, you know, frankly, a lot of the editors that I'm witnessing on this don't have any rhythm. So, you know, I'm trying to do everybody a favor. I just appreciate how hard some of these experiences are catering to their fans. I know it seems like I'm a gotchaholic at this point. I hope the big titty beta testers and rivals can just join us for this corny experience as we kind of just get the fuck out of the worst era in gaming history. I'm probably most excited for Azure Promelia because I'm into that monster bullshit. Listen to this, listen to this. But I don't want you under the impression that I'm cuckoo for gotcha puffs, because I just want to have high quality experiences and pay nothing for them. But I'm sure that there's a bunch of moral police that are just like me. You know, in the video where I was suggesting 10 games post-woke era, I said Fortnite should get off its ass, and it looks like they're finally going to do that with this upcoming 5v5 mode. Fine, I admit it. I'm not as excited for any of these games as I am for us getting the hell out of this era, and maybe a little bit for this upcoming Game Awards show, because we might as well just call it the Astrobot show, right? But for now, that's all I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't enjoy this, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you again in the next video. Really? Look at me.
Were made under his leadership that might have also compromised the election.
The main thing that people comply about my father is that he talks too much. But I mean, it's the opinion of the people. We usually say that, okay, are you voting for president or you want a boyfriend or a girlfriend? You know, he talks too much, but the economy is going good. The criminals are having a very tough time with my father. You know, regular citizen, they are having a better life. You have less bureaucracy. You can take care of your life. You know, a lot of benefits. But the press, all the time, they are doing some kind of notorious scandal because depending on what my father was used to say. Because he has no future. Sometimes getting out of his house, he stop and start to talk with the people, with the press around, and use non-politically correct words. And it became a scandal. You know, in the end of the day, you can affect, talking that so much every day, it affects, you know, people, and maybe you change your priorities.
Remember when checking Twitter was the first thing you did every morning, eager to see what President Trump had shared overnight? Relive the phenomenon that reshaped presidential communication and captivated a nation with the collected poems of Donald J. Trump. Meticulously compiled from the president's most prolific period, this collection transformed Trump's memorable tweets into poetic form. Head over to dailywire.com/shop today.
Well, certainly his reputation outside of, you know, I got low resolution.
Outside of Brazil is bad. If you go to Europe, people you think that my father is the evil.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, like,
he's burning Amazon. He's
right. Well, I can't say that, like, my knowledge of Brazil is shallow, certainly. And so what that means is that whatever impressions I picked up about the Bolsonaro administration were like secondhand representations from the legacy media, right? Not even necessarily direct. And it was certainly the case that the gut sense, I would say, of the typical North American with regards to Bolsonaro was, you know, dangerous right-winger. So definitely. Now, I'm a lot more skeptical about such terminology, you know, now than I was, let's say, 8 years ago or even 5 years ago. But those sorts. See, one of the problems is that it's very easy to tag people, right? Because you can think about it psychologically in a manner that's appropriate. There's a lot of people that you could listen to. There's 8 billion people you could listen to. And so you need a reason not to listen to most people because there's just too many people. And so if you hear something bad about someone that you don't know, it's easier just to assume, well, you can just write them off. And it doesn't matter because there's 8 billion other people to choose from, right? So my point is it's very easy to smear someone's reputation. It's very easy, especially, I think you can especially do that. You can do that especially with disgust rather than fear. Disgust is even more effective than fear. And so anyways, I mean, my impression of for what it's worth, my impression of the Bolsonaro administration was definitely colored by the pronouncements of the legacy media that this was another far right movement, right? And I mean, the same thing basically happened to Meloni in Italy and to Orban in Hungary. And so, well, and I do think it's part and parcel of the operation of the legacy media and the sway that the progressives have over the universities and the legacy media. It's the same thing in Brazil. It's so interesting to see that exactly the same thing is playing out there that's playing out in the United States and Canada and all through Europe.
And that's why Brazil is important to the United States, because we are the lab. The ideas usually come from here and they apply in Brazil. So why Americans should pay attention in Brazil? Because we have a unique thing when you talk about censorship, is because everywhere in the world, it comes through the hands of the president, of the prime minister. For example, you have big issues with Trudeau or with the C-16 law and whatever. But in Brazil, is the Supreme Court.
Yeah. So we can delve into that. Now, this gentleman that you talked about, the Supreme Court, now
Alexandre de Moraes.
Now, is he the same one? Again, I'm exposing my ignorance here, so forgive me. Is he the same one who's at odds with Musk?
Yes.
Okay, so it is this. Okay, that's what I assumed. I just want to make sure okay, so why don't you unravel that story for us? You started going down that road and said that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what role is the Supreme Court playing in Brazil at the moment, and why is it that Musk got embroiled in this very, very public, internationally public argument with the Brazilian Supreme Court? Explain that.
Because Alexandre de Moraes, he was the chairman of the Electoral Court, and he was too aggressive in the 2022 elections, mainly. In the 2022 elections, what happened? Around 100 conservative profiles on Twitter got blocked. To be blocked in Brazil, our law says that you need to give to the other side, to the users, the right to defend himself. And the platform has 48 hours to block someone. This is general law in Brazil. What was happening in Brazil is Alexandre de Moraes was ordering Twitter and some other platforms, I guess, because I'm not that dumb to think it was happening only with Twitter.
Right.
So he was addressing orders to Twitter saying, block this and that people in 1 hour. If you don't do that, I will fine you in, it was, I can tell you, around $20,000, $30,000 to start. It was a huge fine, you know, daily, if you do not accomplish with his orders. But the main thing is, Alexandre de Moraes ordered, according with Glenn Greenwald, the journalist, articles that came up like a couple of months ago, Alexandre de Moraes was saying to Twitter platform, do not tell the users that are getting blocked that this order is coming from me.
Oh, yeah.
This is key because during 2022 elections, Brazilians got pissed off with Twitter because you get your cell phone and then there is a black screen saying you were blocked because you violated one of our internal policies.
Sure.
And then you say, but what post did I do that makes me be blocked in the platform? You don't know.
These are the candidates you're speaking of?
No, or everybody in general.
I see. So this was happening quite broadly?
You have candidates, you have regular people, you have influencers, you have YouTubers like Luciano Hang, for example, who is a very strong supporter of my father, he's a billionaire, he got blocked in this situation. So you are getting outside. Imagine in the United States, you are going to run for president and you cannot see what Tucker Carlson, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, what they are posting or producing on their platforms. This was the situation in Brazil.
Right.
So I'm adding
they
one more
blocked Trump
factor.
too when he was president, so that's quite remarkable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Elon, he bought Twitter right between the first and the second round of the Brazilian election in October of 2022. That's why we know all of that nowadays.
Right.
1 year ago, we would be still pissed off with Twitter.
Right.
But why? Elon Musk started a fight, months ago, with Alexandre de Moraes. Alexandre de Moraes, this justice of the Supreme Court, he has a Twitter account. And he was talking about something, posting his opinion or whatever about something. And then Elon come and commented, why are you demanding so much censorship in Brazil?
Oh, yeah.
Boom, then the things start. The chairman of the Justice Committee of the House of the US Congress, Mr. Jim Jordan, he asked Elon Musk to give all the emails changed with the Brazilian authorities during the 2022 election period of time.
Oh, yeah.
With these emails, now we know, after the report of Jim Jordan in the US Congress, you have around 500 pages in this report, you know that Alexandre de Moraes, the Electoral Court was sending emails to Twitter saying to block people. And some of the people, for example, the journalist Paulo Figueiredo, he only knew why he was blocked in 2022 looking to these reports. So this is the level of censorship that we had. And this is the problem because this is not only about Brazil.
That's for sure.
Europe authorities,
yeah.
Alexandre de Moraes and some other authorities of Brazil, they do speeches in Paris, in London, in New York. They are spreading the virus. And you have some press articles saying that some of the European authority, they were looking closely this fight between Alexandre de Moraes and Elon Musk to copy to Europe.
Yeah.
Because what happened, now I would shock with the Americans that don't know this story deeply. I'm talking about Twitter, Elon Musk against Alexandre de Moraes, right?
Well, there was a top EU official whose name escapes me at the moment, unfortunately, who complained, although apparently not with the full authority of the EU, about the fact that Musk was talking to Trump.
Come again?
That he complained using his EU...
A Brazilian one?
No, an EU representative. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name. We'll put it in the notes. But he complained that Musk was talking to Trump, right? So
what is the crime in that? What is the crime?
The House of Representatives in the U.S. actually wrote a response letter, and I think it was Jim Jordan who signed it, telling him to really mind his own bloody business, as he should have. And the EU, to their credit, did separate themselves technically from him, although, I don't know the entire background of the story. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because that it lends credence to your claim that the EU bureaucrats, who are not the least bit happy with Elon Musk, and the same thing could be said about the UK, especially the Labour Party there, right? They're definitely Musk's enemies and will do whatever they need to stop him. And so, and that is being played out in Brazil. That's part of the reason why I think this podcast should be of broad interest to the international community. So,
because as Brazil, we have this special case because the censorship is coming through the hands of one of the justices of the Supreme Court, and also Alexandre de Moraes fined Twitter, and the first response of Twitter is that they're not going to pay this fine, but after 1 month they paid to get back again Twitter in Brazil because they were banned. So the European authorities, like the woke people, the progressive, they were enjoying that. Oh, wait a minute. So if we do that through the hands of the courts, maybe we can control Elon Musk, and force them to censorship whoever I want.
Yeah.
So this is the point. And what I would say that was shocking is that to do that, Alexandre de Moraes not only banned Twitter, he threatened to arrest the Twitter team in Brazil.
Right, yes, I remember that.
So that's why, thanks President of Argentina, Javier Milei, he offered asylum to this kind of people. They said publicly through Twitter, if the Brazilians want to come to Argentina, they are more than welcome, because here we do preserve the freedom and the free speech and all of that. Yes. So thank you, Javier Milei, the greatest president of Latin America by far. And the second thing is Alexandre de Moraes freezed some of the resources of Starlink.
Yes, well,
but Starlink wasn't in the dispute.
The Europeans are toying with that too. I've looked at some of their background legislation, and the fine structures, Canada is playing with this too, by the way, under the auspices of a bill called C-63, which is the most totalitarian piece of legislation I've ever seen written in the West by a large margin. Way worse than nefarious Bill C-16. That was just the warm-up. In any case, the fines that are being proposed in Bill C-63, which I imagine will be somewhat of a template for the impending war against Musk, involve percentages of company revenue worldwide. Like, I think in the Canadian bill, it's 6% of company revenue worldwide per day. Revenue, not profit, revenue. Well, and then the question is, well, is it X revenue, or is it X revenue and Starlink revenue and Tesla revenue? And well, you can be certain that that'll be interpreted in the most liberal manner possible.
Because Elon is not the owner of Starlink. He has, I guess, 42% of the company, but he's not the owner. You have way other people around in the same company.
Details. Yeah.
And Bill Ackman, some other billionaires, start to complain, wait. This thing of the Brazilian Supreme Court is too far. You know, it's too much power on only one person's hands, and it can be very dangerous, because we know how dictatorship starts, and when they start, usually they have support of part of the people, but on the next day, the supporters will be the target of the dictator.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Know? In all the dictatorships, it happens.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that are happening in this dispute with Twitter, and that's also why the U.S. Congress, they are giving their attention to Brazil. And nowadays, we have a bill from the Representative Maria Elvira Salazar from Florida. It was approved in the committees of the House and is ready to be voted from the House. We only need that the chairman, Mike Johnson, to put that to be voted. And this bill says that if any foreign authority do not respect the First Amendment of an American citizen outside of U.S., they will lose their visa to come to U.S.
The country?
Yeah. For example, if a Brazilian authority do not respect the free speech of Elon Musk or any other American, he is not able to come into and enter the United States. He will lose his visa. So this bill, we hope that is going to be approved in the House, because after that, I'm sure that the U.S. administration, even more with Trump, I'm always supporting Trump, that it can be applied, fully applied.
Right.
It's a way to avoid this kind of authority, because they have too much power. They are doing whatever they want, even with American companies. And come on, Twitter is following all of the American and U.S. law. Why? The Brazilian Supreme Court is banning Twitter outside of Brazil. So it's a way to force people to respect the law. If the Brazilian authorities, if they were respecting the law...
Well, the war is really going to be... So Americans arguably have the most potent protection for free speech rights in the world. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. I mean, countries like Britain, European countries, there's a tradition of free speech, but it's really... our free speech protections in Canada are very weak by comparison, very weak. And that's certainly been demonstrated in recent years. We have a Charter of Rights, but it's got so many loopholes in it that, and administratively and technically, that, I mean, should I say it's not worth the paper it's written on? I'd probably say that. In any case, that's not the case in the U.S. because the right to free speech extremely well protected. And so what we're going to see really is like a war in cyberspace between the principles of American law fundamentally and the principles that govern the rest of the world, because the American social media companies dominate and they run, especially X, on the principle of free speech. And so that's another reason why the situation in Brazil and in the European Union is so incredibly important. Now, this Supreme Court official, how does he derive his power? How long is he in office? Like, where does he get his legitimacy and his authority? And how is he regarded by Brazilians?
When they are appointed for the Supreme Court, the president appoints the candidate for the Supreme Court, and the Senate, after a sabatin, approve the name of the person. So in 2017, Alexandre de Moraes took office in the Supreme Court as a justice of the Supreme Court, and he will stay there until he completes 75 years old. So by the year of 2040 something, he will retire.
I see. So
unless he wants to resign.
Right.
But who can stop him?
And under what administration was he appointed?
Before my father. On the
one immediately before your father.
And the curious thing is it wasn't a radical left president. It was pretty much a center-right president, Michel Temer, who appointed him. No one would expect Alexandre de Moraes would do things like he's doing nowadays.
I see.
It's
and how do you explain it?
It's establishment. His mission was take Bolsonaro out of power and end with this spontaneous movement created not only by my father, because my father is the political leader of this right-wing conservative movement, but on the philosophy part, you have other key men that unfortunately last year passed away, Professor Olavo de Carvalho. I don't know if you never listened about him. He was used to live in Virginia. Several books, very smart. And he is the one who, on the philosophy side, was giving the arguments and also forming new leaders to be on key positions in Brazil to sustain this not right-wing movement, but this movement in favor of the morals, in favor of the honesty and what...
we could call it conservative.
Yes, you can call him as a conservative. So it was Olavo de Carvalho on the philosophy side and my father on the political side, converging to the same target, if I can say that. So the willing of as I can see, of Alexandre de Moraes is to end with this movement led by my father.
Right. Now, so do you think that that's partly an attack on the social media structures that your family used so effectively in your movement to power? Is it a reaction by the legacy establishment against the emergence of social media dominance?
Sure, yes, because if you do not have social media anymore, the monopoly of information will go back against the mainstream media.
Well, and of course, all the legacy media want that. Well,
yes.
It's not surprising that the powers that be on the establishment side, so to speak, even for reasons of mere self-preservation, regard Musk as a threat, because he is a threat. I mean, his stated goal for X is to make it the predominant source of information in the world, right? I mean, he'd like to supplant YouTube, and if YouTube continues to muck about the way they have been, they're so full of snivelly tricks that it's just beyond belief. I mean, they shadow banned the Musk or the Rogan Trump discussion this week because they play around with the search algorithms. They did that to me.
Yes.
And they're so sneaky about it. For example, they blocked, so there's an autofill that people use to find new videos. And for a long time, they blocked the autofill on the name Peterson. And it took us like 6 months to figure that out because my viewership was declining. We couldn't figure out why. It's like, they mucked about with the autofill. Isn't that unbelievably devious? And so anyways, Musk obviously wants to make X into, a one-stop media platform, and he's pretty blunt and blatant in his ambitions, and it's working. I mean, X is the #1 news center in the world now, and it's just getting going because X doesn't do a great job yet of video sharing and that sort of thing. It's not got everything YouTube has yet, but if I had to bet on a company, and it was Google versus Musk, I'd bet on Musk, like, no, hands
Sure.
down. Definitely, because Google's tangled themselves up in this corporate idiocracy, and it's been that way for about 8 years. So,
But you see, you are right. Sorry, Professor.
No.
You are right. But shadow ban would not be a problem if you have other companies on social media, alternative companies. The problem is in Brazil, Rumble is not in Brazil. See, they left Brazil after do not accomplish with some of the orders of Alexandre de Moraes. They said, I'm out.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot survive in a country where they do not have free speech, because free speech is a value that we care here in Rumble. So they left the country, just like X left a little bit after Rumble. And YouTube is the way that you were talking. Shadow ban, doing this, doing that, reducing the voice of the conservatives. And sometimes you watch a Trump video and then the suggested of the next video is a video of Hillary Clinton talking some things.
Yeah.
And but if you have the freedom to have a new social media, it will be okay. Then I have to talk again. Remember when Trump was kicked out from Twitter in January of 2021? I don't know if it happened here in also happened in North America, but in Brazil, people start to run to two other platforms, Parler and Getter. Getter, the CEO of Getter is Mr. Jason Miller, who is together with Trump taking care of the market of his campaign, helping Trump in his campaign. Jason Miller in 2021 went to Brazil to do a speech in the CPAC Brazil. I do organize the CPAC in Brazil. It's the largest gathering of the conservatives all around the world. We have the Brazilian version.
Right.
After doing his speech, he went back to the airport. And guess what? Alexandre de Moraes ordered the federal police to go there and detain Jason Miller. Jason Miller, an American citizen, stayed almost 4 hours in a Brazilian airport because the federal police officers wanted him to sign some papers written in Portuguese. He said, I don't know Portuguese. What is written there? They called someone from the street to do the translation. And Jason Miller said, am I under investigation? Am I a testimony? What is going on here? So after some time, a lawyer come, helped Jason Miller. He didn't sign nothing, but it was embarrassing, this situation. So Alexandre de Moraes, he has a personal fight against Elon Musk and against Jason Miller, two people that are pretty close of Trump. So maybe Alexandre de Moraes is having a conflict with really big guys. Because when you affect a billionaire like Elon Musk, some other billionaires are going to talk about it and have an idea that Alexandre de Moraes is not fighting to preserve democracy, but truly doing the opposite of that, killing democracy. Because to preserve our Constitution, you need to violate the Constitution. You're not preserving any Constitution anymore. And I think this is getting clear and clear to all of the rest of the world. So I expect here, Professor, in the great audience that you have in your podcast, to prevent our friends from Europe, Latin America, North America, to do not copy the model of Brazilian censorship.
Well, we're going to see that play out over the next couple of years. That's for sure. Yeah, and it's a tight struggle. I mean, this new Canadian legislation, Bill C-63, it's so devious. Because the beginning of the legislation and the end are all about protecting children from sexual exploitation online, right? And so, it's a long bill. You're opposed to stopping children from being exploited online?
Sure.
You oppose Bill C-63? It's like, yeah, because I actually read it. And I saw exactly what you did. It's like all your lovely moralizing at the beginning and all your lovely moralizing at the end, and this unbelievable totalitarian proclivity in the middle. It's just beyond comprehension. And so, online harms bill. And you can see, like, it's got to be something, because it's happening everywhere, it's got to be something like the reaction of the legacy communication systems against the new technologies. It's something, and it's no wonder, right? Because YouTube, free video, universally distributable and permanent, is a technological revolution larger than the Gutenberg printing press, I think.
This guy is extremely good.
The Gutenberg printing press obviously spread literacy everywhere, that and the Protestants spread literacy everywhere. But even with that, reading was still a minority occupation, right? I think 2% of people buy hardcover books, right? And most hardcover books that are bought, I don't think are read. And so people read, but a minority of people read most of the books, but way more people can listen. Like it's got to be. I know with my books, at least half of them now are audio, right? And that's the case across the book market in general. But
I prefer listen than read.
Well, many people do. Well, there's a bunch
it's more practical.
Yeah, well, one of the advantages is everyone can listen. So that's a big advantage, you know, because you have to be a highly skilled and literate person to really enjoy reading. And, you know, maybe that's 30% of the population, but it's not much more than that, I wouldn't say. But listening, man, everybody can do that. And you can do it when you're doing other things. And so it's absolutely revolutionary. I knew YouTube was revolutionary back when it first came out. I thought, permanent, universally accessible video. This changes absolutely everything. And that's what's playing out, right? It is, we have this shifting landscape now where the information intermediaries are now obsolete. Well, it's no wonder they're annoyed by that. All the legacy journalists, like, we don't need you. In fact, you're in the way. All the legacy broadcasters, it's like broadcasting technology is 20 years out of date. You know, and Musk recently called for the Americans to take broadcast, so like CBS and NBC have rights to the electromagnetic spectrum that they use to broadcast their channels. Well, Musk proposed 2 weeks ago that just be taken from them because they have an obligation, a legal obligation, to tell both sides of the story, which they certainly aren't doing. And they don't own that portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. And so he thinks it should just be turned over to the tech companies who would make much more efficient use of it. And the legacy media companies can be cable like everyone else. And that's going to happen because there's no reason for them to have that monopoly anymore. So it's not surprising that there's this immense reaction. Like, it's broader than the mere antipathy of the left wing to your family. And that's partly why it's happening everywhere, right? Because it's Brazil, it's the same story in Canada, it's the same story in the US, the same thing is playing out in Europe and in Australia. So you know that there's something really fundamental going on, and part of it is definitely this technological shift. And then the other thing that's strange about that too, and this is where your family's more integrally involved, is that you guys were early adopters of the new media, and that was revolutionary, right? And so there's two reasons to be terrified of it, right? Not only is the legacy media purveyors dead and that whole system of influence archaic, but it's also empowering a whole new crop of political types who are speaking directly to the people. Yeah, well, God only knows what that's going to do. I mean, Trump's team figured that out in this election. Trump has been on, I think this is because of the influence of his son, Barron, who, from my understanding, knows, because he's young enough, he knows the new media landscape. And so I have reason to believe that he's been recommending the podcast hosts that Trump has appeared on, you know, people like Theo Vaughn, for example, and who wouldn't be an obvious Vaughn's a great interviewer, and I like him, and he's super smart. But it's quite surprising that Trump went on Theo Vaughn's show, and he did, and Rogan as well. And that was another demonstration that legacy media,
I think Rogan was almost 50 million people.
Yeah, despite the shadow ban.
Yeah.
Right. I saw today, Kamala Harris used, Kamala, there's some way you're supposed to say that if you're like an acceptable person, but I'm in Northern Alberta and we can't talk. So she did a fairly popular podcast, and it's got 745,000 views compared to 50 million. And I think it's also because the people who are following Trump don't follow the legacy media, whereas the people who are supporting Harris do follow the legacy media. So of course Trump's views are going to stack up because all of those people, all the Republicans in the United States, virtually all of them distrust the legacy media. Mm-hmm. And so they're on the cutting edge in that regard.
I think it's for the first time in history here in the US, people trust more in the Congress than the mainstream media.
And you know things are bad when that happens.
I don't know. I don't know the source. I have a friend. He's a journalist here, and he told me. I do not remember the source, but he said this is fantastic.
Yeah.
In Brazil, no. In Brazil, we have a lot of people that still believes and follow our legacy media over there.
Yeah.
But the numbers of this credibility is going down.
Yeah. Well, and the same thing is happening in Europe. The legacy media is still comparatively dominant in the UK, less in the UK than in Europe, still very dominant in Europe, but that's going to change because it has to. You can't compete with free, right? There's just no way that the broadcast networks can survive because their economic model has been demolished.
And they don't know how to do.
No.
They're using to control the narrative, and they don't know how to do.
No, I know. It's so funny. So CBC is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They have a YouTube channel. Well, you can't post comments. So it's like, that's a no-no, guys. The YouTube ecosystem demands that people post comments. So you've already made a colossal error in your arrogance. I looked recently. CBC posts the programming that it broadcasts also on YouTube. The last 20 posts that they made, each got less than 100 views. 100 views. $1.4 billion in government subsidy a year and another $600 million in advertising. $2 billion a year for posts on YouTube that are getting less than 100 views. That means that even all the actors didn't watch it.
You have to fire all the crew, all the team.
Well, that's Poilievre's plan. He said he's going to stop the government subsidy of media in Canada. God, I hope he does it because it's really quite preposterous. Okay, we should talk about the future. So tell me about your future and about your father's future, like, and where the political landscape is headed in Brazil, and also what's going to happen with the Supreme Court. And like, are the Supreme Court decisions popular in Brazil?
No.
Okay.
But who could stop the Supreme Court is the Senate. But the chairman of the Senate, he already said, Rodrigo Pacheco, that he will not start an impeachment proceeding against any of the justices of the Supreme Court. So the justices of the Supreme Court, they are really comfortable because despite this constitutional tool that we could start impeachment proceeding against one of the justices, you don't have what to do. That's why we run to the United States and are providing information for U.S. authorities trying to help us down there in Brazil, also mainly because what is happening in the Brazil with the support of Lula da Silva, the president, is an attack not only against Elon Musk, but against American companies and not only Starlink and X, but also against the Constitution of the United States, the First Amendment. And thanks God, we are having a good interaction, a good relationship, not only with Jim Jordan, with Maria Elvira Salazar, Chris Smith, Richard McCormick, and some other players, Mike Lee, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott. And for the first time in history, I think we are very well connected with the American politicians.
How'd that happen?
I have to tell you that I come here very often to the United States, opening these doors.
Yeah.
It's not only because of me.
Yeah.
Okay, you have more people involved. But I hard work in that. I do not care. Get a plane, fly economy class, come here to have one meeting and come back to Brazil. I did that several times. And that's how we know one and another. And now they're very polite, very smart. They know the situation of Brazil and they are taking some actions here. We had a hearing in the US Congress in the Human Rights Committee with Chris Smith, inviting the owner of Rumble, Mr. Pavlovsky, with Paulo Figueiredo to debate the censorship in Brazil, trying to prevent US and trying to help Brazilians that are victims of the censorship. So in the future, I think we can do much more pressure coming from the international community, not only US, because I also talked about how great is the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, and who is a libertarian. And we can help Brazil in this way, because with the globalization, everybody's connected.
Yes.
You know, it's not only about Brazil.
Well, as you can tell, because the political issues are the same regardless of the country. Right?
Yes.
The same thing is happening everywhere. And it is certainly in no small part because we're so hyper-connected. And that also means that warfare is going to change dramatically. And what's happening in Brazil, this dispute between the Supreme Court official and Musk, that is a reflection of a new kind of information warfare, right? And it's definitely the First Amendment versus everything else in a very deep way, right? Okay, so you fostered relationships in the U.S. And so that's so interesting because the case that you're making is that you can understand why the Senate in Brazil would be loath to begin impeachment proceedings against a Supreme Court justice, because when one branch of the government starts to go to war against another branch, there's real trouble there. So I can imagine why they're stepping carefully. I'm not justifying it. I just would say that is something that you want to do very, very carefully. But it's very interesting that the pressure is actually being mounted more effectively through the U.S. and internationally than within Brazil itself. What about the typical Brazilian? I mean, all the people that were supporting your father, for example, what's happening with them now? And that'll be our segue, I guess, into a discussion of what you think is going to happen in the future in Brazil. When's the next election?
In 2026.
26, okay.
We had election this year, but it's municipal election, where we did great. Like the number of mayors and city councils that we have, like almost half of Brazil in the capital of the states, the most voted city council is from my party, from our party.
Oh, yeah. That's a big deal, to have control, to have influence at the local level.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
No, it increased a lot. It was great, this election for Brazil. My father, he